Now, it's been 100 days since Donald Trump became the US president again, and the world is already a different place. The United States is also a different country. Trump is acting much faster than he did in his first presidency, and he's surrounded himself with advisors who don't stand in his way, allowing him to keep his campaign promises no matter what the consequences. We're going to take a look now at how Trump has changed the US relationship with the rest of the world.
Imposing steep tariffs on rivals and allies alike, then pausing them. Blaming Ukraine's president for the war on his country, then having a conciliatory meeting with him at the Vatican. Slashing long-standing foreign aid programs. Just a few snapshots of Donald Trump's governing style in his second term. Trump has been dismantling democratic safeguards through executive orders, ignoring Congress and the courts, ripping up old alliances, operating at a high rate of speed, ignoring rules, values, traditions, and the post-World War II order along the way. Transatlantic relations have been upended by a series of flip-flops, leaving allies unsure where they stand. The NATO alliance has come under heavy strain. Trump said in March that the U.S. would not defend allies who don't spend enough on defense, questioning Article 5 of NATO's founding charter, which states that an attack on one member country is an attack on all, shaking decades of European reliance on the U.S. for security. And he's mused about expanding U.S. territory, aiming to acquire Greenland, a territory of Denmark, a NATO ally, and the Panama Canal, and even Canada. Ukraine has gone back and forth from being a valued ally to a pariah that the U.S. government has openly disparaged, and back again. Prizing raw deal-making over diplomacy with mixed messages, alternating claims of great progress and threats to move on from trying to settle the conflict. In the Middle East, Trump unconditionally backs Israel's embattled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A Gaza ceasefire that Trump helped broker in January, even before he took office, later fell apart, with no end of fighting now in sight. After promising to keep the U.S. out of new wars, the military has escalated strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen, deepening its role in yet another Middle Eastern conflict. Trump's declaration of tariffs, what he called Liberation Day on the whole world, kicked off uncertainty and threatens the world economy. Trump imposed baseline tariffs of 10% worldwide. Tariffs on EU goods were later set at 20%. The U.S. stock market plunged, and Trump paused the tariffs, except for China, which imposed tariffs of its own, part of an escalation, leaving China now with a tariff rate of 145%. That depressed stock markets around the world, leading to predictions of recession and less growth, and fears that the U.S. is too unreliable to be at the center of the world economy. Foreign aid has taken a severe hit since the U.S. has retreated from its role as the biggest global actor and donor. Trump's efficiency consultant Elon Musk shut down USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, cutting off life-saving medications and food supplies to some of the world's most vulnerable people. At the 100-day mark, it all adds up to a confusing mess for leaders trying to figure out the new order. With nearly 4 years of this presidency to go, the U.S. is no longer a dependable center of power and influence, forcing the rest of the world to form new alliances without America, with unforeseeable consequences.
Let's get more from DW's Washington Bureau Chief, Ines Pohl. Good to see you, Ines. Now, we're seeing that recent polls are indicating that a majority of Americans aren't convinced by Trump's second presidency so far. How is his style of leadership in these first 100 days gone down in the rest of the world?
Well, global opinion, Anya, on Trump's second presidency is characterized by widespread chaos and distrust, what we just heard in this report you were playing here. You know, Donald Trump's America First policy has just disrupted international relations and really eroding global trust in the United States. And many allies just feel disillusioned by Trump's erratic actions and leading some European nations to seek greater security independence.
In a very short amount of time, Trump has managed to sow doubt in the minds of America's military allies, hasn't he, about the reliability of the US as a partner, at the same time as moving closer to Russia. How badly has this damaged America's standing on the international stage?
Yeah, Trump's relationships with foreign leaders really have been significantly strained by his perceived appeasement of Russia and abandonment, of course, of allies like Ukraine. This has caused many nations to reconsider their dependency on United States support and really encourage them to enhance their own military capabilities. We see that in many, many European countries and also in Germany, of course.
Mm-hmm. We can't ignore Trump's tariffs. They have caused economic chaos both in the US and around the world. He, of course, says he wants to make things fairer, make it a fairer playing field. To what extent, though, have they isolated America further?
Yeah, very much so. And you know, Anya, it's also really interesting, as we're just talking about, today is marking his 100 days in office. And this insecurity is also hurting his reputation within the United States. Many people elected him because they were hoping that their everyday life costs would go down. That was one of the main reasons Joe Biden lost, but they're experiencing now that nothing is really getting better. Quite the opposite. Prices are raising and are supposed to raise even more. So this can be actually really becoming a dangerous internal problem here, domestic problem here in the United States for Donald Trump.
So if we look at the overall pattern of Trump's second administration so far, it seems to be move fast and break things, both at home and abroad. Is it paying any dividends? And also, can he sustain this kind of pace?
Well, that's a very tricky question. It probably comes down how Congress will be reacting if they take their responsibility seriously and kind of correct his path, which he's putting out just by executive orders. And of course, it will also be crucial what happens in the midterms. But they are nearly 2 years away. They will be held by the end of next year in November. So he can still, in this time, he can cause a lot of trouble, and it's really unpredictable if anybody is able to stop him. What is interesting that he is repeating the promise that he won't ignore the ruling of the Supreme Court. That's something which he said in an interview over the weekend with the magazine The Atlantic. He stresses that he's not overruling the Supreme Court, or ignoring the Supreme Court ruling. So that shall be interesting what he does when the Supreme Court jumps in and tries to stop some of his executive orders.
We'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much. That's DW's Washington Bureau Chief, Ines Pohl. Great to speak to you, Ines.
Well, let's take a look at this with Rachel Rizzo, who's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Centre, where her research focuses on European security, NATO and the transatlantic relationship. She joins us from Washington. Welcome back to DW. Let's start with your initial thoughts on this mad 100-day roller coaster ride. What have you made of it?
Well, you just described it perfectly. It's been a mad 100-day roller coaster ride since the president took office in late January. And we've seen, I think, a fundamental reorientation of the U.S. role in the world, really. I mean, it's still based in this idea of U.S. primacy, But we're no longer seen as this stable ally that we've been seen as in the past. The relationship with Europe is in tatters. So is the relationship with our neighbors, Canada and Mexico. We've seen this reorientation towards the Indo-Pacific more in an economic sense than a military sense. Elon Musk and his Doge workers have cut US aid, cut federal workers. So it really has been nonstop, day after day, one thing after the other. And there's no sense that it's going to stop anytime soon. I think we're going to see this sort of chaos continue for the foreseeable future.
Okay, there's a lot to get to. Let's start with defence there, and this pivot away from Europe that seems to have happened. What's your assessment of what would happen if Russian tanks roll into, say, Latvia one night and Latvia invokes NATO's Article 5 Collective Defence Treaty? Do you think the US would pick up the phone?
So this is sort of like the perennial question, right? What happens in a Baltic scenario? Because they're right on the border of Russia. These are small states. There's two things here. One good thing, one bad thing. The good thing is that we have an ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. Marco Rubio went to NATO a few weeks ago for the foreign ministerial, and both have said that the United States remains committed to its treaty obligations, committed to Article 5. And the good news is that a country like Latvia, in fact, all three of the Baltic states spend over the required 2% of their GDP on defense as set out by NATO targets. And in the past, Trump has said, I won't defend European countries that don't spend, but these countries do spend. But that, I think, goes to my second point, which is that transactionalist approach that Trump takes to Europe. If you don't spend, I won't protect you. And this means that the United States would have to fundamentally renege on its treaty obligations under NATO's Article 5. So let's hope something like that doesn't happen. Let's hope we're not faced with a scenario where the U.S. has to come to Europe's defense. But I still think that Europe can depend on the U.S., even if at the same time we are reorienting away from it in numerous ways.
Well, there is a tendency to look at this as all being bad, certainly from a European perspective. Has President Trump's first 100 days brought Europe any benefits?
I mean, I think it's really hard to say. I mean, I think there's some people in the foreign policy community in the U.S. who have said for a long time that the Europeans, these are rich nations, they are strong economically, they should be able to defend themselves without the United States. And I think that Trump is sort of like pushing them into the deep end of the pool. I don't think that this is the right way to go about it, but I think if there's anything good here, it hopefully means that the Europeans come out with this new security identity and find the strength that I think lies latently within the continent. On the other hand, the economic side has been really tough and really damaging with the tariff war, the ongoing trade war that we have until July to sort of try to make this deal, which I don't know if that'll happen or not. And I could see the United States sort of inadvertently pushing Europe and the EU into the arms of China, although I think that the EU is smarter than that and European leaders are smarter than that. We're certainly not making it easy for them.
OK. And again, it's only 100 days, 3 months, but this is a president famously transactional. How should we regard his boast about being the ultimate deal maker? Do the outcomes live up to that boast?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I certainly couldn't point to any deals that have been made thus far. Like I said before, the economic relationship between the United States and our European relationship, the European allies, is in tatters. Same with our relationship with Canada and Mexico. He talked on the campaign trail about ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. That obviously didn't happen. That he hasn't been able to end it in 100 days. And so I think that he touts himself as this great, incredible deal maker. But I don't see the fruits of that labor, at least at this point. You know, his approval ratings are low, especially amongst independents. So I think it's really hard to say so far, but I don't really see any big wins. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see how the next few months goes.
Thanks for that. Rachel Rizzo from the Atlantic Councils. Thank you so much.